Hey VC, Barry Winslow, logging back on for the second part of a two-part huge VC, huge vinyl haul, really. If you haven't already checked it out, I just uploaded my first video, the first part of this two-part video of just basically what I've been collecting and picking up out in the wild in the last about 3 to 4 months. So VC cheers, still wrapping up my coffee here. So my first video, I showed quite a few titles of some things that I found at a sale from a gentleman that I connected with in Facebook or through Facebook, and he basically had a whole bunch of titles that he was basically not listening to anymore, getting rid of, and so I went to his garage and just picked up a whole bunch of great stuff. So threw down some decent cash for a large stack of vinyl and went through and cleaned it up, and all of it just sounds excellent. So if you haven't, check out my first video, but we're going to move right along in this update, and I'm just going to get right into it. This next stack of vinyl that I'm going to be showing, once again, alphabetical. This here is stuff that I found from another vendor, a friend of mine who is a vendor and frequents a lot of the record sales that I go to throughout Michigan. This is a gentleman that I crossed paths with about 5 to 6 years ago when I was living in Marquette. Some of my earliest videos, if you go back into my collection of videos on the VC, you'll see basically the beginning stages of my collection. And one of the gentlemen there that I was buying a lot of my vinyl from at that time is this guy. We lost contact for a while. I actually misplaced his business card, but I came back across him and I said, hey, now that I've bumped across you, I saw him at a record sale and that I went to downstate a little while back, and I said, hey, I got to get your business card. I've been meaning to talk to you. And anyways, we're talking back and forth, and this gentleman has a large garage, basically a facility in Michigan somewhere. I'm not going to give away his location because it is quite the place. But you know, he just has a wonderful garage full of vinyl and used books that he pulls from, and he goes to different sales, and this is what he does. He buys and sells vinyl, and he was happy enough to let me and my uncle come in and dig through his garage. And so this large stack of vinyl that I'm going to be going through is both my uncle's and my findings in our first day of basically our first time going to his garage. There were so many things that I put away that I desperately did not want to put away, just because there was so much great stuff there, but I didn't have enough money. And you know, somewhere you got to draw the line. So this is what this stack is. Once again, playing in the background, this is the new Fleet Foxes record called Crack Up. It's due out tomorrow. Go out and buy the vinyl tomorrow. Like me, I'm going to go out and get a fresh copy. Fabulous band. If you don't know them, definitely go check them out. Fleet Foxes, there it is. This is Crack Up, due out tomorrow. Go out and buy it in stores. Alright, so getting right into it, let's get right into the stack. This is Long John Baldry. Big fan of his. This is Everything Stops for Tea. Really cool musician. Long John Baldry was big in the late 60s, throughout the 70s. Wonderful musician, kind of an eccentric folk and rock guitar player. Wonderful voice. Just a really eccentric, interesting listen. If you don't have any Long John Baldry, or Baldry, which is what he went by a little bit later, I highly recommend checking him out. This one is Everything Stops for Tea. I think it's one of his better works. You can find it for relatively cheap. I highly recommend picking it up. The Fabulous Johnny Cash. This is a mono pressing on Columbia. This is CL1253. Really happy to come across this mono copy. I love Johnny Cash. This is a great snippet, a really early, excellent piece of Johnny Cash at just about the beginning of his prime work. Yeah, not much you can say. It's Johnny Cash. the Man in Black. That is the fabulous Johnny Cash. A really nice mono copy. Alright, staying in the country vein, this is Stoney Edwards and his record called Blackbird. An African-American country and western musician that put out some stuff in the early to mid-70s. He didn't quite strike it as big as Charlie Pride, another excellent African-American country and western musician. But what this guy did, when he did it right, is really good stuff. A little bit spotty, had a hard time really honing in his songwriting skills with, you know, that definite, I don't want to say Texas, but he was more of like the Nashville kind of country sound. But when he did it right and he did hit his stride, this is one of his better works. Go check him out. If you're a fan of early country and western, Johnny Cash, you know, Merle Haggard and things like that, check out Stoney Edwards. This is his album called Blackbird. Really cool stuff. All right. Getting into some really cool, just excellent folk rock. Man, one of the greatest. I'm a huge fan of this. This is a radio station copy. This is Fairport Convention with probably one of their all-time greatest, if not their greatest record. This is Liege and Leaf. If you don't know Fairport Convention, oh my gosh, check them out. Sandy Denny, obviously Richard Thompson. What a band. What a band. Just excellent stuff. So happy to have a nice copy of Liege and Leaf by Fairport Convention. Little bit of damage on the outer record jacket. The vinyl is near mint, VG plus, I would say. Yeah, but you can't listen to the covers anyways. But just a great early, really early radio station copy of Liege and Leaf by Fairport Convention. I love this record. Another Fairport Convention album. This is more of like an amalgamation or greatest hits of Fairport Convention. As you can see here on the sticker, the best of Fairport Convention featuring Sandy Denny, Richard Thompson, and Ian Matthews. I've gone off on Ian Matthews before. What an incredible musician. I have a lot of his early solo work after Fairport Convention broke up, and it's just mind-blowing, as well as Richard Thompson. But this is a two-record early greatest hits of Fairport Convention. This is called Fairport Chronicles, and really happy to have picked this up. Just an excellent, not a huge greatest hits fan, but this is a really nice collection of Fairport Convention. Moving along, some late 60s psychedelia. This is Fever Tree. I'm sure you've heard of them before. This is just straight up called Fever Tree. There's a couple patchy songs, but the majority of this is really good psychedelia. So if you're a fan of like kind of fuzzed out, kind of psychedelic rock and blues, I recommend checking them out. This is great stuff. Fever Tree. Alright, moving along. The third and final record that I've been looking for from this band for the longest time. This is Flash and their record, Out of Our Hands. Obviously, this is featuring England's guitar player Peter Banks, who was the very first guitarist for the progressive rock band Yes. Flash is absolutely incredible. A lot of the critics really like their first two records better. Personally, I think this is Flash's greatest moment. Out of Our Hands, I absolutely love the record art. Just great stuff. If you like if you like progressive English rock and roll, right here. Really cool stuff. I can't say enough about Peter Banks. I prefer his guitar work over Steve Howe. I know I'm probably going to catch some slack for that because Steve Howe is incredible too. But I just love Peter Banks. I love the way he approaches guitar. And this is a phenomenal record. If you find it, pick it up. Flash, Out of Our Hands. All right, getting back to one of the major proponents or major members of Fairport Convention, Sandy Denny, going off in her own way. After Fairport Convention broke up, she formed this band, Father and Gay. They only put out one record, just called Father and Gay. Wow, incredible stuff. If you haven't heard this, if you're not familiar with Sandy Denny or Ian Matthews or Richard Thompson or Fairport Convention, this is really cool stuff. It's not stuff you're going to find in every record store across America. It's a little bit more difficult to pick up, but my goodness, it takes a second to get into. This is not an immediate thing. Their sound is all their own. Just like Fairport Convention, Father and Gay is very hard to pinpoint, but there's a lot of English. You can just tell there's a lot of English stylings in there. Definitely folk, definitely rock, some prog, a little bit of psychedelia, but really, there's woodwinds and a lot of more acoustic type instruments being played here. A great comparison today would be Fleet Foxes. I think this would be like an early, definitely an early influence of the bands like Fleet Foxes or Grizzly Bear that you would hear today. So if you're into those bands today, go back in time and check out Father and Gay and Fairport Convention. Really cool piece of work here. Happy to have it in my collection. This is Father and Gay. All right. Finally, in one haul, I was able to basically knock out my entire collection from this artist. Not my favorite progressive rock band of all time, but they're one band that I can tell I'm going to get into a lot more with each and every passing listen. Having said that, I'm just going to rip through their discography really quick because I did knock out nearly all of their early recordings in nearly one visit. So here we go. Genesis. This is Trespass. An early record. I believe this is their second album. I could be wrong, but I think this is their second album. Genesis, this is Trespass. Moving along. Genesis, Nursery Crime. I got all these for a great price. I got all these records that I'm showing in this stack for around $3.50. That's good stuff. Law of averages, some being more than others, but you know how that goes. Genesis, this is Foxtrot. Really great stuff here. Early Genesis, good stuff. Then they with this album, kind of cracked themselves into the mainstream. Genesis, Selling England by the Pound. Wonderful stuff here. These are all really clean. Cleaned them all. They sound great. Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. A Trick of the Tail. So far, with very early ears and things that I can tell from what I like in the sound of the band and how they've progressed over time, definitely my favorite. I love this record. Genesis, A Trick of the Tail. Like I said, I'm not the most experienced Genesis listener, but for my money, if I was to pick one album to listen to and call it their best, hard to say, but this is my favorite. A Trick of the Tail. Genesis. Genesis, Wind and Wuthering. Still in the cellophane, which is nice too. It's got a really cool, kind of like a promo sticker up there on the original cellophane. It was open, but in the cellophane, that's always nice. So I got through a lot of Genesis. Happy to have that. Moving along, this is Dirk Hamilton. Really, really cool piece of music here. This is called You Can Sing on the Left or Bark on the Right. Dirk Hamilton was a wonderful, I don't want to say blue-eyed soul, but he had kind of a, I don't know, he had like definitely a very refined, in the studio approach to music. You can just tell by listening to these records that they're very well produced. full of session musicians. These are recordings that took a while to get exact. And you can tell by putting this on that, man, does this ever sound great through a nice piece of, audiophile, old-fashioned hi-fi stereo equipment. This is great. Really good stuff, and the session musicians that were used on this were basically all of the same session musicians that played with Steely Dan on records like Asia or Katie Lied, things like that. You can just hear the professional musicianship. This is a wonderful record. Like I said, if you like blue-eyed soul, check out this record here, Dirk Hamilton. Not easy to find. I've been looking and looking and looking for this. I finally tracked it down, and a really, really nice listen it is. You Can Sing on the Left or Bark on the Right by Dirk Hamilton. All right, moving along. Classic record here, Headhunters. Herbie Hancock. Essential piece of Herbie Hancock's record or discography, recorded career, I guess you could say. A little bit of ring wear. A lot of these records do have a little bit of ring wear, but they're all in very nice condition. I mean, they're not new, they're not perfect, they're not mint, but they are very nice. And that's okay with me. I mean, these are definitely very presentable. There's no major rips, tears, pops, or clicks. Very listenable, very clean. Nothing distracting on the audible sound of these records. And for $3.50 a piece, you can't complain about that. So happy to have Herbie Hancock and Headhunters in my collection. I was speaking to him earlier. Another one of his records I have in my collection. I've just about filled him out. And this guy, I can't sing enough, or sing his praises enough. This guy is just excellent. If you find his records, especially his early to mid-career stuff, pick him up. Ian Matthews. This here is called Valley High. Honestly, I can say that I think this is my favorite Ian Matthews record. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful sound. If you like pedal steel guitar, if you like folk rock, if you like singer-songwriter, a little bit of country-esque undertones, and just a wonderful, nice tenor voice. What a songwriter. I mean, there's so many things I can say about this guy, and he just never got the praise. Ian Matthews, this record here is called Valley High. I've listened to this over and over. One of the most played records that I've gotten through this entire stack. It blows me away. Seriously, pick up Ian Matthews. He's excellent. Valley High, Ian Matthews. He's got a few records before this that are also worth checking out. Google him, look him up, and find him. He's wonderful. So stoked to have this next record. This was an album that's been on my want list ever since I can remember. Ever since I really started collecting music. Not an easy record to find for a decent price, especially an original copy. This isn't a mono copy, this is a stereo copy, but still really happy to find an original pressing of this. You got it. This is A Hard Road, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. One of their best records. This is right when Peter Green came in and replaced Eric Clapton when he left the Blues Breakers and started the early formulations of Cream. This here is just incredible music. This is Peter Green and John McVie right before the beginnings of and the formation of Fleetwood Mac. If you want to know the true beginnings of the wonderful band that is Fleetwood Mac, you can trace it all the way back to this record. Incredible British blues. Peter Green, at the peak of his career in the late 60s, honestly I can say was untouchable. I think he was far and above what would soon to be where Jimi Hendrix would take off in 67, 68, 69, as well as Eric Clapton in Cream, and even Jeff Beck doing his own stuff with the Jeff Beck Group. This here is Peter Green at his firing at all cylinders. Fabulous. And if you don't know this, Ainsley Dunbar on bass, and obviously John Mayall on vocals, harmonicas, things like that. Man, so happy to have A Hard Road by John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. Great record. A little bit more from this artist that I picked up. This is, once again, Frankie Miller. In my last video, I showed a couple other Frankie Miller records. This one here, I believe, even more essential of a pickup. This is the Frankie Miller Band and their record, The Rock. I love that record cover. This guy is just a wonderful, smoky-voiced, blue-eyed soul singer. Just great. Irish, Scottish descent, I believe Irish. This guy can absolutely belt it out. Just great. And he never got the recognition that he deserved. One of the greatest smoky-voiced, blue-eyed soul singers I've ever heard in my life. Seriously. Frankie Miller right there on the same page as early Bob Seger and Joe Cocker. The guy could just straight up belt it out. Really good stuff. This one's called The Rock. Moving on, Essential 1959 Jazz. Charles Mingus and Mingus This is a second pressing on the Columbia label, so it's not the collectible pressing, but I don't really mind. It sounds great on my system. I cleaned it up, and I mean, how can you beat it? Charles Mingus and Mingus Really stoked to have a copy of this. I was looking through my Van Morrison collection the other day, surprised I didn't have a copy of this. I thought I did, but you know how it gets. Sometimes you lose track of what you do and don't have and what you got to have on your want list. So, wasn't too hard to track down, but I found a very nice, clean copy for relatively inexpensive. Van Morrison, Moondance. Obviously, everyone knows this wonderful record. If you don't, immediately go to the store and check out, buy a copy of Moondance. Just great stuff. Van Morrison. Once again, this is all the same stack. Still going on the same stack of stuff that I got in that garage up in northern Michigan from the vendor of a friend of mine. So all the same stack. Another great, hard to find and relatively expensive when you do find it, early piece of Van Morrison's career. This is Veedon Fleece. Really nice copy of Veedon Fleece. So happy to have one of these in my collection. It is the original textured cover. Just beautiful. I love the album artwork on this with the Irish Wolfhounds. Van the Man out in the Irish green pasture there. Just a beautiful record. If you're not familiar with this part of Van Morrison's career, do yourself a favor. Pull it up on however you get your music today and snap a copy of this. This is great stuff. Van Morrison, Veedon Fleece. Moving on, another great singer-songwriter and a wonderful, just a very enthusiastic character on stage. Great songwriter, wonderful voice, guy by the name of Mickey Newbury. If you're not familiar with Mickey Newbury, a very short career, but whatever he did touch was very, very well done. This is a live recording of Mickey Newbury. This one's called Live at Montezuma Hall / Looks Like Rain. So it's actually a 2-record set in one record. Really good stuff here. It's live. There's a lot of talking and banter in between songs, which at times can get a little bit long-winded. Probably a lot like my VC videos. But when he does go and gets into the songs, they're wonderfully done. Mickey Newbury, this is a 2-record set, Live at Montezuma Hall, and Looks Like Rain. That's the Looks Like Rain cover there. If you don't know Mickey Newbury and you like singer-songwriter, folk musicians, check them out. Going to early Greenwich Village, folk musicians, artists that influenced Dylan. Mickey Newbury can kind of be in that same conglomeration of artists there. This is Phil Ochs, an early recording of Phil Ochs' early career. This is called Pleasures of the Harbor. This one is still in the cellophane. So happy to have found a really nice copy of this. Essential piece of Phil Ochs' career. This guy was just fabulous. So if you like early Bob Dylan, if you like Dave Van Ronk, check this guy out. Phil Ochs is just wonderful. This is Pleasures of the Harbor, just wonderful sit down and strum acoustic guitar, singer-songwriter folk music. Just great stuff. Phil Ochs. Another really eccentric folk musician, singer-songwriter, Sean Phillips. This is Collaboration by Sean Phillips. If you don't know Sean Phillips, check him out. Really interesting approach to music, and the way that he sings, he does a lot of like scat singing and interesting vocal passages, and the noises that he makes through his chest when he sings, and the way he picks guitar. Very interesting character, very skinny, tall, kind of an odd looking guy, but the way he makes music, man, this guy is, you'll sit down and you'll listen to a side of his record and go, I have to listen to that again because I can't even quite wrap my head around what just happened. Fascinating stuff to listen to. This is called Collaboration by Sean Phillips. His early career is a lot better than his later career, so look for his early stuff. Early Bonnie Raitt. This is Streetlights. Obviously this record has the song about the Midway, and obviously Angel from Montgomery, the cover of the wonderful John Prine song. Probably my favorite version of Angel from Montgomery ever done is on this record. Essential early Bonnie Raitt. This is Streetlights. I love me early Johnny Rivers, and this is exactly what you have here. This is Slim Slow Slider. Johnny Rivers, wonderful voice. This is a beautiful listen. A lot of that early folk stuff are what I've really been getting into recently, and this is another great example. Well worth picking up. Johnny Rivers, Slim Slow Slider. Getting near the end of this stack, coming up next, finally wrapped up this artist's full discography, at least from what I wanted in my collection, all of their early work into their mid to later career work. This is Roxy Music and their album Stranded, their third record. Right after Brian Eno left, I started doing some collaborations with Robert Fripp, doing some stuff called Fripp and Eno. This is just really nice, great Brian Ferry Roxy Music. Awesome listen. One album before Country Life that really took them and shot them up through fame. Wonderful listen, and finally completed what I needed from Roxy Music. Moving on to my favorite country and western artist of all time. Probably one of the top 3 to 5 greatest Texas honky-tonk, heavy honky-tonk, Texas honky-tonk records ever recorded. Seriously, look it up. This is excellent, excellent Texas honky-tonk music. In fact, I don't think it could probably ever be topped. Just my opinion, but this is great stuff. Gary Stewart and his record, Your Place or Mine. Just fabulous country and western, and Texas honky-tonk, Texas swing. This is great stuff. Great stuff. Wonderful pedal steel guitar. Yeah, I love it. Gary Stewart, Your Place or Mine. So excited that I found a copy of this record, an album here that this is their first record by this band, and they were basically brought up and signed and produced from the same producer as Led Zeppelin. I'm forgetting the name at the moment, but it is on the inner sleeve of this thing. Peter Grant, yes. So this is produced by Peter Grant, and this band was basically not necessarily label mates as they were on the Polydor label, but they were produced by, obviously, Peter Grant, and they came up through the ranks basically at the same time as Led Zeppelin. And so this band is more of a straight blues, gospel blues, heavy blues version of where, you know, Zeppelin went off and did like more of the blues, definitely blues, but a harder rock tinged blues. This here is Stone the Crows with their first record, simply self-titled Stone the Crows. Wonderful. One of the vocalists, who is also the bass guitar player in this band, is James Dewar, who went on to play and be basically the main vocalist and bass player for Robin Trower, basically through Trower's early 70s and 80s career. Outside of that, who is also on this, the magnificent female soul singer, her name being Maggie Bell. Absolutely wonderful. If you like Janis Joplin, I think Maggie Bell almost one-ups her. Absolutely destroys the vocals on this, man. Just absolutely kills it. Just a great singer. Maggie Bell. Stone the Crows with James Dewar. And I will say that the very first song on this record is called The Touch of Your Loving Hand. The Touch of Your Loving Hand by Stone the Crows. If that's not the most powerful blues, gospel blues song you've ever heard in your life, I don't know. I don't know what moves you. Because if that song doesn't move you, nothing will. That's how strong that song is. Must listen. Great stuff. Stone the Crows. Pick it up. Moving along, this is a really interesting band here on the Chrysalis label. And they are... I'm not exactly sure. I think they're a Celtic band. I listened to this. It's very dark and ominous. It kind of had like a Midlake, like if you're familiar with the band Midlake, kind of today's fame, like an early Midlake kind of sound. This is Tir na Nog, Tirnanog, a Celtic, I guess Irish Celtic folk singer-songwriter kind of thing, but they're a folk rock duo. The two gentlemen there, their names being Sonny Condell and Leo O'Kelly. Really interesting stuff.